Okay, so when you think of Snow White, what comes to mind? Probably singing animals, a handsome prince, a magic kiss, right? Well, get ready, because that is not the story we're talking about today. We're diving deep into the original Grimm fairy tale, and let me tell you, it is dark. We're talking jealousy, cannibalism, and some seriously brutal revenge. So let's get into it.
So where does a story this dark even begin? Well, it starts with this really beautiful but kind of haunting wish. Picture this. A queen is sewing by a window in the middle of winter. She pricks her finger, and 3 little drops of blood fall onto the snow. And right then and there she makes this wish that, honestly, sets everything in motion and seals her daughter's fate. It's the starting gun for a tale of envy, beauty, and just shocking cruelty.
So how do we get from a simple wish to a full-blown murder plot? It all comes down to a whole lot of vanity, a little bit of innocence, and, you guessed it, a very famous magic mirror.
All right, first, let's talk about Snow White herself. The queen gets her wish, but tragically, she dies in childbirth. So the king remarries, and his new wife is, well, she's completely obsessed with her own beauty. But here's the detail that is absolutely crucial, the one that changes everything. Snow White is only 7 years old when her stepmother's jealousy starts to boil over. 7! She's just a little kid.
For years, everything is just fine for the new queen. Her ego gets a nice little boost every single day from her magic mirror. She asks it the same question day in and day out, and this is the answer she always gets. It keeps her happy, totally secure in her vanity. But of course, that's all about to change.
And then one day, this happens. This is the line that just blows everything up. The mirror, you see, it can't lie. And just like that, the queen isn't number one anymore. Her jealousy, it doesn't just bubble up, it explodes into this furious, all-consuming hatred. And remember, it's all directed at a 7-year-old girl.
So the queen is just consumed by this rage, and she decides she has to get rid of her rival. This kicks off the first of many attempts on Snow White's life, and her very first, very narrow escape. Yeah, there is nothing subtle about this command. It is cold, it is direct, and it is absolutely brutal. She doesn't just want Snow White gone. No, she needs proof. She demands her heart. This one gruesome request, man, it just sets the tone for how dark and violent the rest of this story is going to get.
So the huntsman, he takes Snow White out, but he just can't do it. He's faced with killing the little girl, and he can't go through with it. So he lets her run off into the forest and kills a wild boar instead. But this is where the story gets even more twisted. He brings the boar's heart back to the queen, and she, thinking it's Snow White's heart, has it cooked and eats it. She literally thinks she is eating the heart of her rival, devouring the source of her jealousy. It's just wild.
Meanwhile, Snow White is alone, totally terrified, running through this dark forest. She runs and runs until she just stumbles upon this little cottage. And whose house is it? Of course, it belongs to the 7 dwarfs. They feel sorry for her, and they basically offer her a deal. Look, they say, if you cook and clean for us, you can stay here and we'll keep you safe. And for a little while, it really seems like she's finally found a safe place to hide.
But that magic mirror isn't going to be fooled that easily. The queen's rage is nowhere near satisfied, which leads us to a whole series of methodical and, honestly, increasingly vicious attacks.
So the queen, thinking she's won, right? She goes back to her mirror, all smug, and can you just imagine her fury when it tells her this? It doesn't just say Snow White is alive, it tells her exactly where to find her. At this point, the queen knows. If you want something done right, you've got to do it yourself.
So the queen becomes this master of disguise and tries to kill Snow White not once, not twice, but 3 separate times. First, she shows up as a peddler and sells Snow White these laces for her dress, and then pulls them so tight that Snow White literally can't breathe and just collapses. The dwarves manage to save her. So she tries again. This time she's an old woman selling a beautiful comb, a poisoned comb. It just touches Snow White's hair and she's out cold. And again the dwarves save her. Okay, so for her third and final attempt, she creates the ultimate trap, an apple that's only poisoned on one side. She tricks Snow White into taking that fatal bite, and this time, the dwarfs can't wake her up. It seems like it's finally over.
So everyone believes Snow White is really, truly dead this time. The dwarves are completely heartbroken. But her story isn't quite over. It's about to enter this really strange phase, a mix of grief, preservation, and just pure chance. The dwarves, they mourn for 3 whole days. And because she still looks so beautiful, almost like she's just asleep, they just can't bring themselves to bury her in the cold, dark ground. So instead, they build this beautiful glass coffin for her, so they can still see her. They carry it up to a mountaintop and decide that one of them will always stand guard.
Okay, now this is probably the biggest difference from the version you know. Forget the magical kiss. That doesn't happen here. Instead, a prince just happens to be wandering by, sees the coffin, and is totally captivated by her beauty. He begs the dwarfs to let him take her, well, the coffin, with him. So his servants start carrying it away, and then one of them trips. He stumbles on a root or something, the coffin gets jolted, and that piece of poisoned apple just pops right out of Snow White's throat. She wakes up. It's not true love's kiss, it's just a clumsy accident. Pure luck.
So, Snow White is alive and agrees to marry the prince. A huge wedding is planned. And guess who gets an invitation? The evil queen, who still has no idea Snow White is alive. And this, my friends, is where the story reaches its absolutely unforgettable and truly grim climax.
Right before she heads off to the wedding, the queen, of course, has to ask her mirror one last time. And the mirror's answer is basically her death sentence. You'd think she'd stay away, right? But no, she's filled with this dread, but her vanity, her need to see this rival, it's too strong. She just can't resist. And so she goes to the feast, walking straight into a trap.
She gets to the wedding, she sees Snow White, and she realizes she's been found out. And the punishment is, well, it's swift and it is terrible.
They don't just throw her in a dungeon. No, they bring out a pair of iron shoes that have been sitting in a roaring fire. They are literally glowing red hot.
And then they force the evil queen to step into these shoes, and they make her dance. In front of the entire court, she has to dance in pure, unimaginable agony.
She just keeps dancing and dancing, a horrifying public spectacle of her own downfall, until she finally drops dead. A truly brutal end for a truly brutal villain.
And that's the original story. Pretty different, right? No gentle awakening. Instead, we got cannibalism, multiple murder attempts, and an execution by torture. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Why were these incredibly dark details so important to the original storytellers? And maybe more importantly, what does it say about us that we're still so fascinated by these grim tales today?